The
Can you
hospital
hear me?
was always
Open your
loud,
eyes.
but that night felt
Yes, I hear
different,
you.
like something
Good.
unseen
Squeeze
was
my hand.
waiting.
Vitals are
The young
stabilizing.
doctor adjusted his gloves, glancing once more at the patient file. She had been in a coma for months.
Patch
A
is on.
powerful
How's the pain?
businesswoman,
It's
a
a little better,
millionaire with
thank you.
influence
Vitals are
stretching far
stable?
beyond the
Rhythm is
hospital
good.
walls.
How are you
Yet
feeling?
now she
My
lay
head
silent,
hurts.
fragile, and
Okay, let
forgotten
me check your
except for
vitals.
routine care.
Is it bad?
Most
You're
of the
stable.
senior doctors treated
How
her
are
like
you
a lost
feeling?
case.
A little better,
Machines
thank you.
kept her alive, nurses followed
Just rest now.
schedules, and the world outside had
How
already
are you
moved on.
feeling?
But he didn't see her
Little
as just
better,
another
thank you.
patient. Maybe it was because he was new.
How are you feeling?
Maybe it was
Little
because he
better,
still
thank you.
believed that every
Good.
life deserved
Rest now.
effort, even when hope seemed
How are you
unrealistic. He picked up
A
the
little
fresh
better.
bandage,
Good.
carefully
Just
removing
rest
the
now.
old one from her arm.
Can you
The
hear me?
wound had been
Open your
healing
eyes.
slowly, but something
Yes, I
felt
hear
off.
you.
He
Good.
paused.
Squeeze
the
my
skin
hand.
around
Vitals
it
are
didn't match the
stabilizing.
reports. It looked irritated, like something had been mishandled. He frowned. Strange, he murmured under his breath. The nurse beside him shrugged. We just follow instructions. It's been like that for days. For days, he repeated quietly. Something didn't sit right. He checked the medication chart again. Everything looked normal on paper, but reality told a different story. He gently cleaned the wound himself this time, slower, more careful than routine required. Sometimes, he said softly, almost to himself, routine isn't enough. As he wrapped the new bandage, his movements were steady but thoughtful. He adjusted her arm slightly, ensuring better blood flow, then paused again. For a moment, he just looked at her face. Who
Patch
left
is
you
on.
like
How's
this?
the
He
pain?
whispered.
It's a little
There was
better,
no
thank you.
response, just
Vitals
silence.
are stable?
Rhythm is good.
But as he turned to leave, something happened. A faint movement, so slight it could have been ignored. He froze. Wait, he said sharply. The nurse stopped. What? He stepped closer, eyes fixed on the patient. Her fingers, they twitched. The nurse blinked, probably a reflex. But he didn't believe that. He leaned in. Can you hear me? His voice was calm but firm. If you can hear me, try to move again. Seconds passed. Then another twitch, not random this time, intentional. His heart began to race.
How are you feeling?
She's responding, he
hurts.
said, his voice
Okay,
barely
let me check your
controlled.
vitals.
The nurse looked
Is it
stunned.
bad?
You're stable.
That's not possible, but it was. The young doctor didn't waste a second. He immediately called for further evaluation, ignoring the skeptical looks from others. Senior staff arrived, confusion spreading across their faces as they saw the signs for themselves. Within minutes, the quiet room turned into controlled chaos. Tests were ordered, machines were adjusted, and for the first time in months, hope entered the room, but not everyone was pleased. In a corner, two administrators whispered, their faces tense. This wasn't supposed to happen, one muttered,
How
the other
are
nodded.
you feeling?
If she wakes
Little
up,
better,
everything
thank you.
changes. The young doctor noticed their unease, but his focus remained on the patient. Something deeper was unfolding, something beyond medicine. Hours later, her condition stabilized, but she remained on the edge between unconsciousness and awareness. The doctor stayed longer than his shift, reviewing every detail of her treatment history. And that's when he saw it, a discrepancy, medication doses that didn't align, subtle changes over time, nothing obvious but enough to raise suspicion. This wasn't an accident, he said quietly. He felt a chill, someone had been interfering, but why? He looked at her again, a powerful woman now vulnerable. Someone had something
How
to
are you
gain from her
feeling?
silence.
A little better,
The
thank
next
you.
day he tried to raise
Good.
concerns,
Just
but
rest
his
now.
words were dismissed. Stick to your duties, a senior doctor told him bluntly. Don't create unnecessary problems. But he couldn't ignore it. Because deep down he knew something important, something simple yet powerful. Kindness isn't just about doing what's expected. It's about doing what's right even when it's difficult. So he continued. He double-checked medications himself. He monitored her progress closely. He stayed late, unpaid and unnoticed, ensuring her care was genuine, not just routine. Days passed. And slowly she improved, her breathing steadied, her responses became clearer. Until one evening when the room was quiet again, she opened her eyes fully. The young doctor was there. He didn't react with shock
How are
this
you
time,
feeling?
just quiet relief.
A little better,
You're
thank
safe,
you.
he said gently. Her lips
Rest
moved,
now.
weak but determined. They tried, she whispered. He leaned closer. Who? But before she could answer, footsteps approached, and suddenly everything made sense. This wasn't just a medical case anymore. This was a battle, and he had unknowingly stepped right into it. Her voice was faint, but her eyes carried urgency. They wanted me gone, she whispered. The young doctor felt a weight settle in his chest. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't delirium. She knew exactly what she was saying. Who? He asked again carefully, but before she could answer, the door opened. A senior administrator walked in, his expression controlled but alert. Doctor, visiting hours are over, you should step out. The young doctor didn't move immediately. Something about the man's tone felt forced. She's awake, he said calmly. The administrator paused
How
for
are
a
you
fraction
feeling?
of a second, just enough to
little
confirm
better.
suspicion.
Good. Just rest
That's
now.
unexpected, he replied. Unexpected, the word echoed. The doctor stepped aside slowly, but his mind was racing. He had seen enough to know this wasn't just coincidence, the irregular medication, the nervous staff. The sudden tension now that she had woken up, someone had been benefiting from her silence, and now that silence was breaking. Later that night, he returned quietly, checking on her again. This time there were no interruptions. "You're in danger," she said softly, her voice gaining slight strength. He shook his head. "Right now you need rest." "No," she insisted weakly. "Listen, my company board members, they wanted control. I refused, then everything went black. The pieces fell into place: corporate betrayal, power, money, control, and the hospital," he asked. "Someone inside helping them," she replied. The doctor took a deep breath. This was bigger than he imagined, but fear didn't stop him. Because he remembered why he became a doctor, not just to treat symptoms but to protect lives, even when it meant standing alone. Over the next few days, he acted carefully. He documented everything, every unusual order, every suspicious change. He avoided confrontation, knowing that one wrong move could put both of them at risk. Meanwhile, her recovery continued. Not because of expensive machines or advanced treatments, but because someone finally cared enough to pay attention. One evening, a nurse approached him quietly. "You're being watched," she said. He looked at her surprised. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. She hesitated. "Because what you're doing, it matters." For the first time, he realized something important: kindness spreads. Even in silence, even in fear, the nurse had noticed. Others had too. His quiet determination had begun to shift something in the hospital, but danger was still close. That same night, an attempt was made to alter the patient's medication again, but this time it failed. Because he was ready, he confronted the staff member involved, not with anger but with evidence. "There's still time to do the right thing," he said firmly. The staff member broke. Fear had controlled them, pressure from powerful people, promises of money, threats of losing everything. But in that moment, truth became stronger than fear. The hospital administration was forced to act. An internal investigation began. The hidden connections between corporate figures and compromised staff slowly came to light. And at the center of it all was one simple act: a young doctor choosing to care. Weeks later, she fully recovered. The world saw it as a miracle. News spread about the powerful woman who woke up from a coma against all odds, but no one knew the full story. No headlines mentioned the small details: the careful bandage change, the extra minutes spent checking, the quiet refusal to ignore what felt wrong. He didn't seek recognition. He didn't tell his story, because to him it wasn't about being a hero, it was about doing what was right. One day, before leaving the hospital, she met him privately. "I owe you everything," she said. He shook his head gently. "You don't owe me anything. You saved my life," she insisted. "No," he replied calmly. "I just didn't give up on it," she smiled, understanding something deeper in his words. "Then let me do something," she said. "Not for me, for others." And she did. She reformed her company. Exposed those who betrayed her, invested in ethical healthcare initiatives, ensured no patient would ever be treated as just another case again. And still, his name remained unknown, a silent hero. An unsung protector, because true kindness doesn't ask for attention, it works quietly. It stands firm when no one is watching, and sometimes it changes everything. The real miracle wasn't just that she woke up, it was that someone cared enough to notice she could.